On Monday, June 8th, 1959, a makeshift bus made its way down this road, Baseline Road, in South Phoenix, heading to Tolleson. It was originally a truck that had been converted into a bus, with a few wooden benches and no windows. It was filled with 46 Mexican nationals, all farm laborers, on their way to work. It was completely overcrowded, with about 13 inches of room between the men, and some of them sleeping under the benches. 2 American citizens were on the bus, 31-year-old Tony Guerrero, the regular driver, and 20-year-old Nato Manuel Gloria Jr. Nato had taken over for Tony about 5 miles prior, but as he drove along the dark, desolate road on the outskirts of the city, he began to fall asleep. As he tried to fight it, he told himself that he would stop at Central Avenue, where there was a service station where he could wash his face and wake up. His eyes closed, his head jerked back, and he opened his eyes real wide to wake up. His eyes closed again. The bus veered off the road, hit a 3-foot deep ditch, and slammed into a tree. It instantly erupted into flames, spreading quickly throughout the bus. The sound of the crash woke up residents in the nearby homes. They described it like a clap of thunder. The screams of the men and the roar of the fire filled the night sky. On the bus, everyone scrambled to the back to get out, but a 50-gallon water drum, roped to the rear, and one side of the bus had broken loose and swung into the back entry, blocking it. Also in the way were a number of suitcases of some of the men. Nato survived the initial crash and ran to the back and was able to help pull the metal barrel aside. Some of the men who were jammed up against it had spilled out. They climbed over suitcases in the process. Everyone tried desperately to get out of the bus, some clawing over each other, crawling over each other, doing whatever they could to survive. Police arrived quickly. Those who made it out laid down in a ditch. Some wandered in a field in a state of shock. This photo shows the moments after they got there. One neighbor attempted to put out the fire with a garden hose. He later said that there was nothing they could do. All of the victims were taken to Memorial Hospital. Extra doctors and nurses were called in to help. A priest arrived and attempted to give last rites to any surviving victims. When the fire was out, the bodies were removed from the bus. 2 survivors told of the scramble to get out the door, and now they had to fight their way around a big water barrel and a pile of suitcases. Leopold Martinez, age 28, said he was sitting near the rear of the door when he felt the crash. He said, "It knocked me to the floor. The whole bed was on fire. 3 or 4 men jumped over me and out the door. I crawled to the door and rolled out into the ditch. Some of the men were asleep on the floor under the benches. They never had a chance to get out." For many of the men, this was their last workday in the United States. They planned to return to Mexico in a day or so. One worker said he had his life savings in his shirt, and the shirt burned off his back. The money lost. 16 men died that morning. One burn victim later died from his wounds, bringing the total amount to 17. 2 men escaped death when they reported sick at the labor camp in Mesa that morning and were not aboard the bus at the time of the crash. The next day, white crosses were placed at the crash site for each of the victims. 32 survived the crash and inferno that ensued. The driver, Nato Manuel Gloria Jr., was one of them. This photo shows Nato explaining what happened to a representative of the Mexican consulate in Phoenix. He told her and police that he had fallen asleep and had planned to stop at Central, and that he had taken over for the other driver, Tony Guerrero, who perished in the crash. He had taken over only 5 miles from the crash site and was about 100 yards short of Central Avenue, where he planned to stop. In Washington, James P. Mitchell, Secretary of Labor, said he ordered an immediate, complete investigation of the accident. Nato Manuel Gloria Jr. was charged with 16 counts of manslaughter. An inquest into the accident was held. Secretary William Larson of Agricultural Commodities Incorporated, a growers' agency for contracting Mexican farm workers, said beneficiaries of each man killed would draw $4,000 in death benefits, plus $250 for burial expenses. The injured survivors would have their hospitalization and medical care paid for, and would be compensated for any physical disabilities caused by the accident. The Mexican consulate made preparations to have the bodies of the victims returned to Mexico. Patrolmen said that they found no evidence that Nato Manuel Gloria Jr. had been drinking or speeding, and Nato testified in court that he was fighting sleep at the time, and he planned to stop but fell asleep at the wheel. A federal court jury found Nato guilty of negligence, and they also found the Garand Company guilty of negligence and gross negligence in the crash. Agricultural Commodities was the contracting employer who assigned the braceros to the Garand Company for work. The Garand Company was a truck farm firm that operated the bus. The bracero program were a series of bilateral agreements between the United States and Mexico that allowed Mexican citizens to work legally in the United States, primarily in agriculture and on railroads, between 1942 and 1964. In June of 1960, charges against Nato Manuel Gloria Jr. were dropped. They were dropped under a state law that permits dropping certain misdemeanors if requested by the injured party. 46 suits seeking nearly $6 million were filed by heirs of the dead and injured, but only 2 went to trial. All of the suits were dismissed by a federal judge after the out-of-court settlements were announced, which totaled $375,000. The settlements ranged from $400 in injury cases to $22,000 in death cases. Services for the 16 Mexican nationals that were killed were held at the Glendale Memorial Park Cemetery, where they're buried. A monument was erected dedicated to the victims. Francisco Daniel Moreno, 45, Miguel Curiel Enciso, 23, Pedro Romero Medina, 28, Benjamin Carmona Lopez, 19, Cruz Juarez Baena, 44, Socorro Escobedo Carrera, 43, Benjamin Nieto Villicana, 36, Ruben Reynoso Padilla, 23, Filiberto Cabezas Lara, 21, Efren Aguirre Medina, 20, Jose Rivera Gonzalez, 30, Salvatore Elena Villa, 28, Pablo Villanueva Luna, 35, Antonio Cervantes Lopez, 44, Benito Torres Mendoza, 36, Alfonso Aguirre Jara, 21. Tony Guerrero had been in the Army and was a Korean War veteran. He was 30 years old at the time of his death. He is buried at the City of Mesa Cemetery in Mesa, Arizona. The area where the crash occurred, now surrounded by businesses, stores, homes. The street was expanded, a lot of changes. Couldn't pinpoint exactly where the crash occurred, but it was in this area. This video is dedicated to all of the victims. May they rest in peace.